state. Give me your reaction to what you heard, not only just your reaction, gut reaction, but from a legal perspective.
Well, I've heard the extraordinary excerpts that the Washington Post has, and at least based on those excerpts, it sounds like Donald Trump is talking like a mafia boss, and not a particularly smart mafia boss at that. This is the way that people in organized crime rings talk. And you see it there. I think Carol was absolutely right to point to President Trump asking the Georgia officials to find him 11,780 votes. Maybe that works in the Soviet Union or something. It certainly hasn't been the way that the American government has operated. And so I see both, really truly an impeachable offense here. This is, the heart of what the abuse of power that our founders worried about so much is. It's, the idea that a government official can use the powers of his office to try and stay in office and try and browbeat other officials who disagree with him. So one question is whether or not a high crime and misdemeanor was committed. Certainly the tape makes it sound like it has. The second is whether or not there has been a criminal offense, and the federal code 52 U.S.C. 2511 prohibits a federal official from interfering in a state election process. And again, that sure seems like what we heard on the tape. And so I think that the Justice Department at least has to open an investigation, if not now, on January 20th. I think that is, the least that will happen here.
How does the timing of all this, Neil, affect any potential legal outcome? Because had this happened a couple of years ago before, midterm elections that wouldn't necessarily be involving the president, but, those that he may have supported or something, it might be different. But we have 17 days left in this presidency. That's it. So how does this get pursued legally speaking? How could it potentially affect President Trump, either as president or a private citizen?
Right, so there's two different legal outcomes. One is this whole nonsense that's going on January 6th, where Republicans are going to try and challenge the election results. This tape certainly isn't going to help him, but, Trump had a 0.0% chance of winning on January 6th anyway. Mm-hmm. So this Trump I don't think makes things worse, in terms of the outcome. It does make the optics look worse for these joker senators who are siding with the president on this. But beyond that, I don't think it matters. With respect to Trump's own liability, I think it makes criminal liability a lot easier because Trump has been protected by his Justice Department, which is not the way the Justice Department traditionally thinks of itself, but it has been for the last 4 years. But that's now going to change on January 20th with a new administration. Joe Biden has promised impartial administration of justice, and we'll see how that cuts after an investigation. It might be that Trump has some defense here that's not evident on the excerpts of the tapes that we've seen. I don't know, but the one thing I'm sure of is that it's got to be investigated. And with respect to impeachment, sure, impeachment is, generally you think of it as reserved for people who are in office. But actually, our founders made the impeachment remedy available even for people out of office to bar them from future office holding. And
Neil,
Donald Trump,
that's the money point you're making right there of how this could affect Donald Trump down the road. Whether or not, and I've spoken to many who don't believe that his political aspirations to run for election again in 2024 are legitimate, Michael Cohen being one of them, who says that he's going to have so much legal trouble and things he has to deal with, he won't have time to even consider running for president again. But there are those who certainly would support him. That we know for sure. So is this the kind of thing that could prevent him from ever declaring a candidacy again?
Absolutely. That's one of the remedies our founders put in the Constitution itself, was to use impeachment to bar someone from future office holding. And look, I side with those who think Trump won't be able to run again. He's going to have criminal and civil exposure on any number of fronts. But I still think it is the right thing to do here. If you have a president who abuses his power in this way, future American presidents and the American people need to know you can't behave this way, even if you're not going to run again. This is unacceptable in an American democracy. Go back to the Soviet Union, Donald Trump.
Okay, which is also going to bring up the prospect of pardons. Not the pardons that Donald Trump has demonstrated he's willing to do in the waning days of his presidency, but the potential for pardons of him for various levels of malfeasance. Does the country fare better with an investigation and being held accountable for wrongdoings, or does the country fare better? It is a question, that is, pardon me, with allowing for pardons. It's a question that certainly going to have both sides of the coin with the answers on that. But what's your thought on that?
Well, I think that you need to have the investigation first. I don't think that we can decide in a vacuum, whether a crime has been committed or what the right thing to do for the country is until the facts are uncovered first. And for 4 years, the Justice Department has tried to prevent at every turn an inquiry into those facts. I mean, it is so laughable to me that the Republicans are now insisting and claiming, oh, fraud over the election. There's been serious accusations of fraud about Donald Trump for 4 years. They never bothered to investigate, and they tried to stop it at every turn. So I think the American people will best be served by just an impartial investigation by career officials at the Justice Department, what actually happened here. And if it turns out, as it looks like, a crime was committed, absolutely, you've got to prosecute. I mean, nobody should be above the law. That's what the American Revolution was fought all about. And so it's not a happy moment right now to see this. It is a moment that a lot of people have said we were going to hit with Donald Trump, that we're hitting it with 17 days to go. Maybe the only surprise here that it didn't happen earlier.
Neil, Carol, Jeff, Kimberly, I'm going to ask all four of you to stay right there. I want to get your final thoughts on this as we're going to wrap up my hour in just a moment. But let's go to Georgia right now, because I want to see how this is reverberating there. We have NBC's Priscilla Thompson, who's in Garden City. That is where Vice President-elect Harris will be holding a rally in just a short while. So, Priscilla, is this trickling out to people there? Are they getting a sense of what the Washington Post's explosive report is all about? Has anyone talked to you about hearing this audio tape yet?
Well, Alex, I've spent the past few hours here talking to Democrats. My colleague Julia Jester was at some of the Republican events today, and largely people hadn't yet heard about this. Some folks had gotten the alerts on their phone, but the sense that we're getting is that this is not impacting how Georgians are thinking about this race necessarily on Tuesday. Democrats here saying this is expected from the president. They're not all that surprised, sort of rolling their eyes and really focused on these Senate seats, which they think are far more crucial than the president attempting to relitigate what happened in the November election. Meanwhile, what we're hearing from Republicans is much of the same that I've heard from them, even as I've been out speaking to Republicans at polling sites, which is that, yes, they believe there is fraud. They are concerned about that. But guess what? They're still going to the polls as well to vote in these Senate races, sort of just as a just in case. They want to make sure that they're doing their part to save these Senate seats. So is it having an impact? I think that will be seen possibly on Election Day. But for now, it just kind of seems like the president is continuing to talk about this as a lot of voters have moved their focus to these Senate races that are going to begin to be decided on Tuesday, Alex.
Okay. Thank you so much for that update. Appreciate it. Priscilla Thompson there in Georgia. Okay, Kimberly, guys, we've got about 4 minutes or so to just wrap up with your thoughts on all this. Again, it is an absolutely stunning audio tape that we're hearing, thanks to the Washington Post extraordinary reporting. Carol Leonnig has noted Amy Gardner, who's brought that to us, which is extraordinary indeed. So your thoughts on how this is going to play out, not only today in the news cycle, but come Tuesday and more notably on Wednesday. Kimberly, first.
Yes, I mean, I think that, as I said before, I can't imagine anything at this point moving the Republicans who are backing this effort. But I think it is important that it lays bare for Americans to hear with their own ears just how far President Trump has gone in this effort to undermine the election result. And I think history is not going to look kind on this moment. I think everything that Neil said is absolutely correct, that this seems to be an impeachable offense. And I think that is something that every member of Congress who took the oath of office today to serve and protect the Constitution needs to think about in their actions this week.
Okay. Jeff, to you, your wrap-up thoughts on all this and how this is going to play out within the White House.
Alex, I think what this means is that this is all not over with President Trump for the country, for himself, for us, for some time. It makes clear to me and I think to everyone listening that the president's not going to give up on his efforts, both to undermine the election and to continue to challenge it after Joe Biden is in office. it just suggests to me that he's going to all efforts that he possibly can, and is not accepting reality now.